Hello and welcome to another episode of Neo's Arcade News. I want to briefly share with you an email I received from a senior executive at Basic Fun in response to some of the critiques and concerns around their WrestleFest product launches that happened this past week. It was a crazy week with product arriving in warehouses and being shipped out within 24 hours. People started to receive the products and they started to show people what they'd received, and very quickly started to put up information about these products, some of which we hadn't even heard or known about until people received the actual products in their homes. And not all of it was good. And unfortunately, there were quite a few posts and videos made about it. I attempted to summarize some of what people were finding in a Reddit post. Everything from missing characters in the Superstars game to no plexi over the control deck and questionable printing, the marquee and the artwork in terms of, not having very deep colors and what looked like some kind of washout. There were also, potentially some quality issues, both in the cabinet itself and in the game coding. So some real issues there for sure, and no shortage of critique from the community. In fact, it was virtually overflowing. Every content creator that I had seen had made something about it. Most of them, however, didn't take time to talk about anything that Basic Fun might have gotten right. So just to provide some balance or context, I attempted to do some of that, and I'm not going to go crazy with this. I don't want to sugarcoat it or, hide the problems, but there were some things that Basic Fun did get right. I mean, first of all, they landed the WrestleFest license, which nobody had done prior. Yes, there were some issues with certain characters not being included. That was largely, related to stuff with the WWE, but perhaps they could have done more. I don't really know. So no excuses there. But there were other things they did well too. They included a 17-inch IPS monitor from BOE right out of the gate. Didn't have to wait years for that or deal with crappy TN monitors. They made a nice switch to cam locks as part of the design, so there's not all of those ugly screw holes or plastic caps to deal with. And there's certain design things we could tell were uniquely theirs. The PCB, maybe this isn't seen as a positive for some folks, but it is a unique design for Basic Fun. It's not a carryover Arcade 1-Up product, rebranded or anything like that. And ultimately, with coupons at least, they were generally able to stick to the price points that were promised. Now, whether or not that lasts remains to be seen. With tariffs and such, probably not. But they at least attempted to hit those price points. So, some good with the bad. But I think we needed to be kind of realistic about just what was happening. And, people are being honest about that. And I think it's hitting Basic Fun pretty hard. I'm sure this launch was, we know it was a long time in the making. There were things I heard about that will probably never be made public that were real challenges. And, these are real people trying to do a good job. At least I think they are. I want to give them the benefit of the doubt that they really try to put in a good effort. And this was an aggressive first product to launch. WrestleFest, that's not an easy thing to necessarily get right for your very first product. Probably would have been better for them to go in with like a Centipede or, Asteroids, some of the other things that they have lined up, but they went with WrestleFest. So, good or bad, it is what it is, but they're taking some knocks for it. So the interesting thing to me is not just that they've been, taking these hits on the chin, because we've been doing that with Arcade 1-Up for years, and they pretty much just ignore it for the, for everything I can see at least. But Basic Fun doesn't appear to be doing that. In fact, this is what I received Saturday. It's an email from a senior executive at Basic Fun that it basically acknowledges some of the challenges explains some of what happened kind of behind the scenes with the tariffs and the licensing, some of that, and basically says, we hear you guys, we appreciate the critique, we're fans as well, and we want to do better, and we believe we will do better. We've got some exciting things lined up for 2026. Now, at first, I thought maybe this was a little bit of a cut and paste from something that had been sent out to other content creators. There was some continuing conversation in here since I had spoken with this contact previously, but most of it I thought was maybe brought in from something else that had been sent out generally. I've checked around, and as far as I can tell so far, it wasn't. It was just sent to me, which is fine. But I asked for permission to share this with the community as a response of sort to some of the critiques. And, I was told I could go ahead and do that, which is why I'm sharing it with you now. So, take this for what it is. Certainly in the past, Arcade 1UP has said similar things and then, failed completely to deliver on any of what they said. That's not to say Arcade 1UP hasn't improved products over time. There was a period there where they certainly did, but that to me was driven less by the fans specifically and more to certain internal voices that really pushed for improvements. And those internal voices largely are not at Arcade 1UP anymore. In fact, some of the voices that may have resisted improvements are now at Basic Fun. So the question remains, will Basic Fun listen to some of those voices that care really just about sales at the expense of, let's say everything else? And by everything else, I mean the fans who generally are responsible for making these brands what they are. Or are they actually going to try to stay engaged with the community, take the feedback to heart, make improvements where they can, and generally try to be accommodating of what we want to see in these products to the extent that they can build a brand and a trust with the community that can then extend outward to the products that they're going to release in the future, and have some level of credibility and trust built with the fan community. Now they're off to a kind of a rocky start, but that doesn't mean that things can't be corrected and can't be improved. And if they continue to remain open to communication with the fans and are honest about the challenges they face and what they can and can't do, I think they'll do a pretty good job. Again, it remains to be seen if that's what they are going to do, but an email like this tells me that for right now, at least on the surface, that's what they intend to do. So I certainly hope that's the case, and I want to applaud and thank them for reaching out at all. Again, that's not something we're seeing a lot of right now. In fact, the other home arcade companies are pretty bad at communicating right now, and it's been a constant frustration for the community. So an email of this sort really goes a long way in the sense that, we're very interested and wanting to communicate with companies and have that communication go both ways. So again, I appreciate this. Take it for what you will, but I wanted to share it and provide some of the context around it so you can interpret it as you will. And we'll see what happens with Basic Fun and all the other home arcade companies in 2026 and beyond, whether or not they're going to deliver on some of their promises, whether or not they're going to continue listening and adjusting, or if they're just going to take, kind of what the path of least resistance might look like. And I'm certainly sure that's going to be tempting. There may be voices internally or externally that push them to go that way. I certainly hope they will continue to be receptive to fan and critical input and continue to adjust accordingly. And if they do, I think they have a real chance at being successful, and not just an Arcade 1UP 2.0, but something new in the market that we haven't really seen, and that could really be successful. So we'll see. And that's all I have for you today. I look forward to seeing you again here on Neo's Arcade News.